The first round of the Stanley Cup playoffs are in the books, and it's time to preview round two with team analysis, injury updates, series prices, Stanley Cup futures, our picks, and more as Prime Sports Hockey Playoff Edition on the Prime Sports Radio Network starts now. All right, it's Thursday, April 26, 2018. I'm Greg DePalma, and before we get started, make sure to visit Covers Experts. That's experts.covers.com. Take 50% off any purchase by using promo code PRIME50. That's PRIME50. Dave Koken from Covers not able to join us tonight. We've had some technical difficulties here all day in my neck of the woods. We are ready to go, though, so we couldn't get Dave on, but I got Dave's picks, so I will share them along with our other picks for the series prices. We've got four more to go as we have the semifinals of the conference, East and West to talk about here on the show. A lot of injury updates to talk about and more. Welcome in Jan Levine from rotowire.com. And Jan, what was the biggest take as far as you were concerned with the first round?
I think there's two takes. First of all, the Game 7 of Toronto against Boston kind of saved the first round because other than that, it was kind of boring, for lack of a better term. There really wasn't a lot of juice to the series overall. I'd expected a bit more. Secondly, I think it has to be Vegas advancing. I know a lot of team people had picked them. I did not. I went 7 in the first round with my only loss being taking LA over Vegas, but not just Vegas advancing, Vegas sweeping LA. And then similarly with San Jose sweeping Anaheim. So what I think it did show as well is that the physical play is wonderful and good, but a team with speed and skill can clearly defeat a team that is largely based on their physical play, sometimes relatively easy in the playoffs. And that's what I think we saw a lot in the first round. So those were kind of my takeaways in the first round. But I do expect, though, the matchups in this round are really, really good matchups. We should see 4 excellent, fun series to watch after what I would refer to as kind of a nondescript first round.
Yeah, let's start first of all in the West with that Vegas win. And most of the games were very competitive, but Vegas, it seemed like they were leading the entire series. I'm not even sure if the Kings had a lead in the series, but we'll find out for real about Vegas when they take on San Jose. But before we get into San Jose, just about let's talk about the way that they were able to beat the Kings. Do you think, if you had to pick one or the two, it was more Vegas or disappointing LA? Because I got to tell you right now, I was surprised Sutter was let go. I kind of understand when you let a coach go. Sometimes things are stale. But if I'm an LA fan, I'm saying to myself, whoa. Didn't you get rid of Sutter because of his style of coaching and you wanted to score more and up the pace, and you felt maybe things were getting stale, and this is the product that you put together for the playoffs? I mean, if you were going to put this type of product together for the playoffs, you might as well have just kept Sutter.
I think you have to give a lot of credit to Vegas. First, Marc-Andre Fleury had a .977 save percentage. I mean, let just that sink in as to how good Fleury was. I mean, you had 2-1-0 games that they won, a 2-1 double overtime game, and a 3-2 victory. So as good as MAF was, you can also say that Jonathan Quick was nearly as good. He had a .947 save percentage. But I do agree with you that it just seemed like Vegas was in control. Even if they weren't leading, they seemed to have I wouldn't say a stranglehold, but definitely a clear advantage in the series. LA's obviously top producers didn't produce. I mean, overall, LA didn't produce, largely because of Fleury and what I would refer to as a nondescript defense, something we spoke about in the preview, where I was a bit concerned about the defense because not because they didn't have big names, but because I didn't know whether or not they would be able to keep up what they did during the year. And they did that and then some against the Kings. So they did shift from Suter to Stevens. We all thought the move to John Stevens would result in additional offense. We saw that during the year with the kind of season Kopitar had, the rebound year Dustin Brown had, the kind of season they got from Drew Doughty, production from Toffoli and from Pearson and from Jeff Carter when he returned. But give Vegas credit. They played a very strong and good disciplined game against LA. They used their speed to create opportunities to counterattack where necessary. And when things broke down, Fleury was tremendous between the pipes. And the end result was a surprising sweep. And I think the fact that they won didn't surprise a lot of people, but in the manner in which they won, and especially sweeping it, is the thing that came to an absolute huge surprise.
Okay, well, now let's get to their opponent, San Jose. So how did San Jose, because that to me was actually maybe more surprising. It was not just because San Jose swept, but San Jose dominated the series for the most part. How did San Jose, now, and I got to tell you, I was pretty happy that I actually put some future money on San Jose before the playoffs started. It makes me feel a lot better. And look, I took San Jose a couple of years ago to win the Cup, and they came real close to doing it. And then last year, Nashville, this year, Nashville. But I'm starting to wonder, okay, what about San Jose here? Was that a matchup thing? Just like we're going to say with Vegas, was that a matchup thing for some reason? Or has San Jose turned something on again? And compared to what we saw a couple of years ago, could this team be ready to go through a deep run?
I do believe San Jose advanced similar to the reason that Vegas advanced. I think their speed and their offensive depth wore down and outweighed Anaheim's advantage in size. I mean, it's one of the things we spoke about is, we love the move of getting Adam Henrique. We thought that he added a nice third center to go along with Ryan Getzlaf. We talked a lot about Getzlaf's inability to score this year, at least putting the puck in the net. We talked about Corey Perry a little bit in terms of his rebound, but his production was down. One of the big absences that they had was missing Cam Fowler, which proved to be a big difference maker, especially when you factor in Sami Vatanen was dealt to get Adam Henrique. All of those, and I don't think that John Gibson had a particularly good series, but on the flip side, San Jose got production up and down the lineup. Brett Burns produced, Justin Braun produced. You got stuff out of Paul Martin playing well defensively. Martin Jones turned back the clock to what he looked like a couple of years ago when he carried the Sharks to the Cup Finals. Logan Couture had a good series. Joe Pavelski had a good series. Then they got production from the third and fourth line guys. We talked about Sorensen producing. We talked about Timo Meier producing in the podcast before the series started. So all those combined, and even without Joe Thornton, they had more than enough offense and really good performances out of Martin Jones to take advantage of LA. And they made Anaheim look very slow in that series, which is why there's been a lot of talk as to whether or not Anaheim is going to move one of those veterans. If they can move them, either Getzlaf, Kessler, who's been injury prone, at least this year after a fine year last year, or Corey Perry, whose production has declined over the last couple of years. So Anaheim looks like they really are a team in transition, especially after getting swept in the first round.
All right, so moving on to the other Western matchup, we have Nashville and Winnipeg. And Nashville probably should have closed things out in 5, but they showed their championships, and they're close to one, but they got a Western Conference championship. They showed their Western Conference championship medal by dominating Colorado in Game 6 on the road. So that was just a minor 10-minute blip in Game 4, or else it would have been in Game 5, or it would have been a 5-game series. So that went pretty much as planned. Winnipeg also went as planned. We thought they would dominate. There was one game of a slip up, and that was it, and it was all Winnipeg. So we really thought that Nashville and Winnipeg would win kind of the way that they did. And so now they match up with each other, and this is going to be a matchup of two really good home ice teams, maybe in all of hockey. But I think the difference here is Nashville's got the playoff experience from last year and the last few years. And I also think that they're a better road team. So I still like Nashville in this one, but this should be a fun series.
Absolutely. I mean, we talked beforehand, and I still believe you may be looking at your Western Conference Finals just a round early this year, given how good these two teams are. I mean, Nashville has the depth up front. They have a solid offense. You're looking, Kevin Fiala's played well this year after missing, most of the Cup run because of the injury. You've seen what Philippe Forsberg has done again this year. Ryan Johansson has been a little bit up and down, but he's been okay. We've talked a lot about their big four on the blue line, Subban and Ellis and Ekholm and Yossi. Pekka Rinne did not have a great series in the first series. I think Colorado extended them a bit more than we would have expected based upon what the projections were coming into the series. Then on the flip side, I mean, you see what Winnipeg did. We knew that Minnesota was a little bit behind the eight ball without Ryan Suter on their blue line. We talked a lot about Winnipeg having the depth up front, their big three lines, able to roll their top three in any situation and get production from them. They got Jacob Trouba back, which was big, and Connor Hellerbuck kind of put his stamp on the playoffs so far in terms of his playoff. And then the home ice advantage is one of those things in hockey that doesn't exist a lot more. But I can say that in Winnipeg, you would have to say the Jets clearly are one of those teams that have the home ice advantage. So this is two really, in my opinion, evenly matched teams in a series that can absolutely go either direction.
All right. Well, let's talk about the East, and you've got Washington. Now look, we've talked an awful lot about Washington and their inability to win the big one. Now, a first-round series win over Columbus isn't the big one, but still, when you're down 2-0 and all of a sudden everything is looking like it had in previous playoffs where you're the favorite of the series, you're at home in the first two, you lose both games, and you're starting to think, okay, boy, this is just, here we go again. Once they took game 3 in that long overtime win, even I said, you know what? I think they're going to win this series. And because they had done something that I haven't seen them accomplish in a few years, and that is win a game where it's like you could just tell everybody was just expecting them to lose. Now, I don't know if that carries them over Pittsburgh, but the fact that Malkin's out game 1, if they can get off to a good series lead, that would be huge. I'm still going to kind of buy my time, though, at least for the first few days of that series before I decide to invest any money in Washington to win the Cup. But I'm starting to think, okay, maybe.
Before the series, I thought that Washington had no question a tremendous chance of winning that series, which is part of the reason why I picked them. And even when they were down 2-0 in that series, both of those losses coming in overtime, the one questionable piece I had is that Washington blew leads of 2-0 and then 4-3 in game 2, and that may be a big concern. But you could see that the battle was fairly even. I mean, Philippe Grubauer, we talked a lot about when the series started, whether or not Grubauer should start the series, and I was in agreement that given how well he had played to start the year and given how Holtby had struggled, that he deserved the opportunity. He clearly was not up to the task early on, and this is a difference in things I've read online, Steve Alloquette and others, the difference between a really good regular season goalie
That's right.
and the scouting that goes in for the playoffs and teams able to pick out weaknesses and capitalize on those weaknesses and to how good you need to be to win in the playoffs. I think to switch over to Holtby and the way he played down the stretch, even though they lost in game 2, gave Washington a bit of confidence going into game 3. I would say they got a very fluky goal to win that game, but I'm a big believer in Branch Ricky's line of luck is the residue of design. You can make your own breaks, and Eller going hard to the net and getting in front and the double deflection kind of led to the goal that gave them the win, winning game 4 on the road in a pretty dominant performance, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Game 5 was always going to be a kind of a toss-up, and it did go to overtime, and Backstrom got the big goal there. And then in game 6, Washington was really good again. And what you've seen is you've gotten production up and down the lineup from that team. You've gotten Matt Niskanen, who's played pretty well from the blue line. John Carlson had a really, really good series. Production from Backstrom, especially from Alexander Ovechkin, who was really good. Oshie had a pretty good series. The third line, Lars Eller and Devontae Smith-Pelly had a very good series, in my opinion, in terms of helping to turn the tide after them losing the first 2 games. And then the other flip side is Holtby, how good Holtby was in terms of steadying between the pipes and winning a series that we all thought they should win, but especially helping them rally from 2-0 down. In Pittsburgh's side, I mean, it all starts and ends with Crosby. You saw the game Jake Gensel had the other day by getting 4 goals, and he was absolutely dominant. They are missing Evgeny Malkin and Carl Hagelin for game 1, which is a big piece. So you kind of like to, Washington, you would think has to get that win tonight.
Have to.
Not, take the advantage, not giving Pittsburgh a chance to say, ooh, look, we won game 1 without our big gun. That gives us confidence for moving forward.
Yeah. No question. Washington won't win this series if they don't win this game tonight, which is actually why, and it's home, which is actually, I like Washington tonight. They've got all this confidence going. that you've just got to, if you're going to go with Washington after what's happened with this club the last few years, and based on what's happened in the postseason the past week or so, and then with the injuries to Pittsburgh, you got to go with them. This is the time to go at Washington. Go one step at a time. Take them game one. Go from there. Because if they blow game one, then not to touch them anymore. And then in the other, you're going to be playing a Pittsburgh team that really had no problem. I mean, the one game that they lost was really a surprise. Maybe they took their foot off the gas, and that's quite possible. But this is a team that they dominated in a regular season and they dominated in the postseason. I mean, and I got to tell you, this is one thing that we haven't talked about yet, but you did mention, of course, the speed factor, and that's important because the speed comes goals. And that's something that we have really enjoyed so far in this postseason, have been the amount of goals that have been scored, and Pittsburgh certainly scored a lot of them.
Absolutely. And as I said, Crosby was big, Gensel was big, especially in Game 6. It almost looked like you were watching a track meet where both teams is who was going to blink first. And Philly, where they ended up playing 3 goalies in the overall series, which made an absolute difference. I mean, Penguins scored 7 goals in Game 1, 5 goals in Game 3, 5 goals in Game 4, 8 goals in Game 6. I mean, Philly had 2 big games where they scored 5 goals, but Pittsburgh showed their ability to counterattack, their ability to turn D into offense. That was the advantage of having a healthy Chris Letang this year, who missed last year's playoffs. Oli Mata was very good in that playoffs. Justin Schultz in terms of moving pucks from the blue line. So I think it's going to be a fun series to watch. I just think that Pittsburgh has had Washington's number for so many years and so many times, and Washington has never been able to get to that next step. We sort of wonder, you only get so many kicks at the can, and they're starting to run out of shots and kicks at that can. That this, maybe, as I said when we talked, before the playoffs start, that so many people had counted Washington out because of the changes and the losses the last several years, that maybe they go in as kind of the real underdog, a major underdog. And this is the year that maybe they kind of, quote unquote, sneak up on people and get past teams that maybe we didn't expect them to get past. One being Columbus. A lot of people picked the Blue Jackets. Washington's a fairly strong underdog in this series. I just have a hunch that they kind of get the job done somehow, that all of those games that Pittsburgh has played, and they've now played more than 300 games that have counted over the last 3 seasons, maybe it sort of catches up to them this series a little bit.
Yeah, you know what it reminds me of? And that's the reason why I'm willing to give them at least one game, and then maybe as long as they win game 1, I might decide, okay, maybe it's time to put some future money on Washington, because if I put future money on Washington at this late in the stage at 6-1, then I'm going to have to invest a little bit more across the board with the other teams, including Pittsburgh, more than likely, because I've got them pretty much just in the clear by about 300. But the team that what they remind me of, because it has to, is the Boston Red Sox. And the fact that they were, because remember, not only did the Red Sox win when they kept losing time in and time again, but they did it down 3-0, and they did it in the series against their nemesis. So here's Washington down 2-0, multiple overtimes, about to go down 3-0. They pull out that game, win 4 straight. Now they're playing their nemesis. So that's why I'm saying this is starting to look eerily similar to that. Sometimes these teams just need one. It just happens, and when it happens, you gotta roll with it until until it happens no more. So that's why I think that maybe as long as they win game 1, see if they win game 1, their Stanley Cup odds aren't going to drop down that dramatically, not against Pittsburgh. So I think I'm willing to go, okay, win game 1, and then maybe I do it, because if you lose game 1, then I've lost all sort of faith. All right.
I can't argue with that. I mean, again, the easy rhetoric is to say a narrative is, well, they lost game 1, there goes the series. But look, we saw what happened against Columbus. Granted, a much more difficult opponent, facing a team that has won 2 cups in a row and a team that has had your number for the last several years, and you need to take advantage of them when they're at a position of weakness. So that's why I think we all believe that winning game 1 is the key here for them to have any kind of chance of winning the series.
All right, and then you've got Tampa Bay and Boston, and we mentioned that Boston series. Look, see, to me, the Boston-Toronto series was exactly what I thought it was going to be in respect to. I don't think Toronto maybe wins a game in that series if it's not for Babcock. I mean, that defense was pathetic. And I don't even know how they could have gone in. I mean, with some of the talent that they still have to have, I mean, shouldn't they have some sort of talent somewhere enough where they could have at the deadline added something to that blue line? Because that defense was so bad. And I bring this up because that, to me, that's not impressive for Boston. I'm sorry, but you're down a goal in that team with that defense in Game 7. You almost blew that series, and I'm supposed to get behind you for the series against Tampa. Ain't gonna happen. Definitely like Tampa in this one.
It's kind of hard for me to argue with you because, as you said, Boston almost blew a 3-1 lead, very eerily, almost like 2013 again, when a 3-1 lead almost dissipated. They did. I do give them credit for coming back down 4-1 in Game 6 and making it 4-3 and having a shot to tie late. I give them credit yesterday after losing the lead a couple times and falling behind heading into the third, having a monster third period to get the win. Jake Gardner came out after the series and questioned his own play. He was horrible. I thought Austin Matthews did not have a particularly good series. Frederick Anderson did not have a particularly good series. On the flip side, Rick Nash struggled tremendously in this series, and a lot of people were calling him out in Boston for failing to produce. But the veteran stepped up. Patrice Bergeron, 2 goals yesterday. David Krejci, 3 assists yesterday. And then the kid, Jacob DeBrusk, had 2 big goals yesterday, and turning the one that turned out to be the game winner. I don't think Tuukka Rask had a particularly great series. Charlie McAvoy wasn't particularly great. You do know what you're going to get out of the Marchand line. That line, the Marchand, Bergeron, Pasternak line is absolutely phenomenal. I do think Boston does have enough offensive depth, in my opinion. This is where you put back in Ryan Donato because you're going to need the offense that he can provide in the series. I don't know if I sit Tommy Wingles, but there's others I might sit instead of him to make sure that Donato gets back into the series. But this could also be one of those things is that you could have we got through the first round. We almost blew it. We maybe should have gotten knocked out with the way we played. Maybe they take that deep breath. They have a couple of days off to regroup, a couple of days to get themselves settled in, and they advance forward. Now, I'm still sticking with my original pick because I can't change it now of Boston in 7. That said, though, Tampa Bay looked tremendous, in my opinion, in the first round. They pretty much, I wouldn't say they dominated New Jersey because New Jersey did get 1 win, and in another game they lost. They almost ended up beating Tampa, and they made Andrei Vasilevsky look a little shaky at times. But you look at the depth, their defensive depth with Hedman and Strawman and Sergachev, and especially McDonough, who played a lot better in the playoffs. You look at the offensive waves they could do, Stamkos and Gord, and you look at the other, especially Kucherov up there. JT Miller settled in unbelievably nicely. You have Tyler Johnson, who had a good series. But I do think the key is going to be is can Tampa's number 1 or number 2 lines keep the Boston top line off the score sheet, and B, do you get better goal play out of both Vasilevsky and Rask? And whoever kind of cracks first is the one that, in my opinion, that team has the major advantage in the series, because that's going to be the key in terms of which team advances. It always is, but the teams are fairly evenly matched up. I give Boston a little bit better advantage, maybe offensively, even though Tampa's got a tremendous amount of talent given how well their number 1 line's playing. And Tampa clearly has the edge on defense in terms of what exists in their blue line right now.
All right. Now, as far as we mentioned the Malkin, Hagelin injuries, any other key injuries with these teams going into these matchups starting tonight? Anything?
I mean, again, you'll probably find out of injuries that that teams are playing through that just haven't gotten reported yet. I mean, you saw what Wayne Simmons played through. You saw what Ivan Provorov played through. I mean, nobody's that out, I've explicitly seen. I mean, there's nothing that you've seen that guys are clearly looking like they've been slowed by injuries. I mean, nobody in Tampa, I think, really missed the series. Boston, I don't think anybody's really banged up. I think everybody's kind of back right now. Pittsburgh, we talked about the major injuries there. Washington, I think, is relatively healthy. Vegas has had almost a week off to recover. So is San Jose. The only big injury probably there is Joe Thornton. And what happens with Thornton as to whether or not that he can get back in from his knee injury sometime during the series. That's probably the biggest name that's maybe questionable for whether or not he gets back into the series.
All right, series prices, Tampa Bay. Really, if you take a look at all these series prices, most of them are pretty even, so that's good news for matchups. The biggest number is Nashville minus 145, Winnipeg plus 125. But Las Vegas is the slight favorite. Pittsburgh's the slight favorite. Tampa is the slight favorite. So that's and as far as the Stanley Cup odds, they range now from 4-1 to 8-1. So again, very even because nobody is under 4-1. So Tampa and Nashville are the 2 favorites at 4-1, and San Jose is the top dog at 8-1. Taking a look at Dave Koken's picks, he's going to go in the West. He's going to go Nashville in 7, Vegas in 5. So he's changed his tune. We know how much he liked the Kings to win that series, but he's very impressed with Vegas, obviously. So he's going to take Vegas to win in 5. He's going to go Washington and Boston in 7. Look, the one series that I'm just not sure of is Pittsburgh, Washington, because I kind of want to go at Washington, but I just can't do it. So right now, so I'm gonna still take Pittsburgh because I can't take teams like Washington. But I think we've given them a pulse. We've given you a reason to believe maybe. But I'll stick with Pittsburgh barely over Washington, and that's history. But I do like Tampa, I do like San Jose, and I do like Nashville. And sticking, of course, with Nashville and Tampa as my final matchups, with Nashville winning it. But San Jose is the one team that has really impressed me the most. And I'm glad, like I said, I put some future money on them. And that would be the team that if I was looking for a team other than Tampa or Nashville, actually San Jose, Washington would be like my backup final, to tell you the truth. What about you in those 4 series?
Well, I mean, my 4 series, I'm going to stick fairly close to what I predicted before. So I have Washington beating Pittsburgh in 6. I have Boston beating Tampa in 7. I have Winnipeg beating Nashville in 7. And originally I had San Jose, LA, with San Jose winning. So I have obviously San Jose, Vegas, and I still have San Jose getting past Vegas to advance to the Western Conference Finals.
And how many?
6.
Okay, so you're going to have Boston, Washington, San Jose, and Winnipeg.
Correct.
Okay, so all right, so that means that you and Dave both have Washington and Boston in the East, and so I'm the only one with Tampa Bay, Pittsburgh, and you've got San Jose and Winnipeg. Dave's got Vegas and Nashville, and I have San Jose and Nashville. So we all have differences in the West. So that's interesting. Okay, now as far as futures, you still have a whole bunch of teams in it, but the only teams that are ahead of the amount of money that you've invested this season, and the big one is San Jose. Of course, that's the one you want to win because you would make about $3,800 on that one. Then the next in line is Washington at $1,400. Then you've got Boston at $600, Winnipeg at $400. You also have Pittsburgh at $400. Now, that means that if you want, and those are the teams you're going with, you're fine. You don't have to invest in anything if you don't want to, because the other teams that are below the 2,200 are Nashville, Tampa, and Vegas. So you don't have Vegas advancing, so I guess there's no reason to put any money on them. You don't have Tampa, so no reason there, and you don't have Nashville, so no reason there. So I guess you don't have to really put anything on your futures this week. If you don't want to.
How much money do we have left? Do we have any money left? How much money do we have left?
Oh, you can invest as much as you want.
What's the odds on Tampa and Nashville?
Tampa's 4-1 and Nashville's 4-1. And Tampa, you've only got $1,000 invested on Tampa, so you'd have to put up at least $300 on Tampa, which would put your investment to $2,500. And then Nashville, you would only have to invest a couple hundred there. So.
I think I've invested in a bunch of other teams already in there. I'll take the 300 on each.
Okay. Well, keep in mind you do that, and your investments then go up to 2,800, which means Boston wins and you're even. Winnipeg wins, you're down 200, and Pittsburgh wins and you're down 600. So 400.
Just to recoup a little cash, put 100 on each. Let's put 100 on each, just in case. My picks are wrong. I can maybe recoup a little bit of cash.
Okay. Well, again, chances are we are going to wind up doing another show, as we've talked about before, in between the series. Sometimes we'll do that. In this situation, the fact that we weren't able to get Dave on at some point. I know we're trying to get Steve on too, and now we're not sure if we're going to be able to do it tomorrow. If we are, we might just come on and do it again tomorrow. We'll see if we can get Dave, see if we can get Steve, because the lottery is Saturday, and that's big for fans like you and I. With the Rangers in Vancouver, so we're pretty stoked about that. Even though I'm really not, because Vancouver never is successful in the lottery. Have the Rangers ever been successful in the lottery?
Not since the lottery has kind of come in. I mean, they've had a couple of couple of high picks. I mean, not really high in recent memories, but they did trade up years ago, and they drafted the infamous duo of Pavel Brendel and Jamie Lundmark. That worked out very well for them.
Okay.
Gave up a bunch of picks to move up to go get those guys, but they haven't picked really. I think they haven't picked earlier than. I think they picked Mark Stahl at 12. They had a couple years ago. They had the 10th pick when they took Dylan McIlrath and passed up several players that year. And I won't give you the list because it just makes me sick every time I go through the name. But one of the names just to keep in mind was Vladimir Tarasenko. They passed up that year.
Okay. All right. By the way, how do you pronounce Steve's last name?
It's a very good question. I'm going to have to confirm with him 100% in terms of it. But I think it's Steve Kornianos is the way you pronounce it.
All right. And Steve's background?
His name is a draft analyst, so produces a whole bunch of stuff as it relates to the draft. One of those guys, if you're not following him on Twitter, it's at the draft analyst. Again, at the draft analyst, gives some contributes to Dobber Prospects, which is a really good listing in terms of it, to the sporting news. Big time hockey draft analyst. Definitely worth following if you're not following him now, and has his top 100 already out and lists in terms of top players and prospects for the draft, which is, as Greg mentioned, for both of us, this is a very a key draft, especially for my team, who's looking to get another, hopefully get a really high pick, and we'll know this weekend in terms of where they pick, because the lottery results get revealed on Saturday night.
Yeah, and the one team that is not allowed to get the first pick is Edmonton. They're not allowed. If they are, then they should just not be allowed, because they've had more than enough chances, and after making the playoffs last year and boning it this year, no, not allowed. All right, anyway, and by the way, I'm not going to do anything with my futures. I still have 4 teams left, 2,100 invested, so I have a $300 profit on Pittsburgh right now, a $900 on Tampa, a $900 on San Jose, and a $1,900 on Nashville. So those are the 4 teams I have in the semifinals. So I'm going to go ahead and just hold that for now. And possibly the next time we do a show, I might do something with Washington, as I said. By the way, again, so not sure if we could do something tomorrow. It's possible. But if we don't do it tomorrow, we'll just do it next week, and then we'll do a post-lottery show, and then we'll know the teams, and then maybe Steve can even give us some predictions on since he'll know who the teams are, who he thinks will go where. So if we don't do something tomorrow, we'll definitely do something next week. So that's so looking forward to doing that before the next round here in the Stanley Cup playoffs. So Jan, appreciate it. Enjoy the games, and you and I will talk again tonight. For the NFL draft. We have our Jet show tonight right after their pick. So we're going to do a show at 9 o'clock Eastern, give or take a few minutes. I know you're going to be on the road, so hopefully we'll be able to get in there somewhere around 9 Eastern right after the Jets pick. So that's on Jets Uncovered on the Our Lads Football Radio Network. And then we'll be back on talking Jets on Saturday night when the draft is over to recap their entire draft. And then, as I said, at some point in the next few days, we'll be talking hockey too. So, Jan, looking forward to talking again a little bit later on tonight. And then, of course, the next time for hockey.
Sounds good. Busy time of year, but a fun time of year, both in terms of the NHL playoffs, NBA playoffs, and the NFL draft this weekend.
By the way, was Steve just going to call in?
Steve was just going to call in, correct.
All right. I just saw the light moved, but now it's not moving. See, I get a lot of calls while we're on the air with that light moving, and most of the time, 99% of the time, it's like it's a bad number for telemarketers. So that's why I switched the line. I used to have that as my primary line, and I used to get all these telemarketers all the time, so I just switched it over, and I took out the phone in the back, and I switched it over, so the line that doesn't ring now is the one that gets all the telemarketing calls. So, but I'm assuming that we told Steve to call, so I was just looking, and I just peeked at it, and I just missed it. And so anyway, okay, but just tell Steve that, like I said, maybe we can talk to him again tomorrow or after the lottery. And Jen, thanks a lot once again. So we'll talk soon. And also don't forget, as far as Dave Koken is concerned, from Covers, once again, want to let everybody know you can get 50% off. That's a 50% off purchase over at Covers. Go to the website there. And that is experts.covers.com. and get 50% off any purchase, not just hockey, but any purchase. Use the promo code PRIME50. That's the code you got to use. That's PRIME50. So for Jan Levine, I'm Greg DePalma, and again, Dave Koken. We'll talk to him soon right here on Prime Sports Hockey and the Prime Sports Radio Network. We will see you again real soon.